What's poppin', everybody? This is Logan Murdoch from Real Ones, and I have some big news to share. On Saturday, February 18th, the Ringer NBA show will be hitting the road for All-Star Weekend for a live show in Salt Lake City. You heard that right. We are taping the pod in front of a live audience in Salt Lake next month, and we want you to join us. Pull up on us at the Stateroom in the heart of downtown Salt Lake. You can grab your tickets now at thestateroom.com. That's thestateroom.com. Doors open at 9 o'clock. Show is at 10. It's going to be a 21 and up event. Come hang with the gang and chat, mid-season updates, draft preview, and even have a Q&A with us. Space is limited, so grab your tickets while they last at thestateroom.com or click the link in the description of this show. Hope to see y'all in there.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name's Kevin O'Connor, and here again today is Kyle Mann. What's up, Kyle?
Not too much, Kevon. I'm doing okay, doing all right. Ready to talk some draft.
So today we're going to be handing out some college prospect progress reports. It's around midway through the season. We're not quite at NCAA March Madness. We're not quite at the end of the year here. So now we're going to check in on some of the prospects. Some we have discussed, some we haven't discussed yet. Let's start off, Kyle, with a player who everybody knows if they follow basketball online. That's Emoni Bates. We talked about him earlier in the year. Transfers from Memphis to Eastern Michigan. Not a good school at all. They really suck.
Are you attacking their like academic credentials right now? Are you going on record and saying
not their academic credentials? They are 300.
They shouldn't be accredited.
They are 343rd out of 363 college basketball teams in defensive rating, according to Ken Palm. They are not a good team. But Emoni Bates is putting up interesting numbers. You have some people on Twitter saying, how is this guy not a first-round pick? Others saying he shouldn't be drafted. He's averaging 20.3 points on 36% from three, shooting 40% on catch-and-shoot threes, 33.7% on dribble jumper threes. He takes pretty much any shot he wants at all for Eastern Michigan. He had 29 straight points for Eastern Michigan last week, a game that went pretty viral online. Last night, he had a big block, talked a lot of trash, as he often does after blocking the shot. Kyle, we know Emoni Bates can get buckets at the college level against some weaker competition here. Where are you at with him? After earlier in the season, you expressed a lot of concern about his NBA prospects.
I kind of let him have it earlier in the year, didn't I? I was thinking back about that in my notes.
You went off.
You were like smiling a lot in our intro in a way that made me wonder if I was. I don't know. I was like, what is going on? It looked like you were just suppressing like just absolute jubilation. I was trying to figure out if you knew something I didn't. I guess you're just really excited about Emoni, which.
Well, I like it. I like watching Emoni. Like, that dude, he jacks up everything on the court. He just shoots.
Constantly jacking it. You know what I mean?
Nonstop.
Yeah.
Getting tired.
Yeah, we are immature human beings. It's amazing that like he's putting out like these counting stats, and you look at like his like efficiency catch-alls, like you said, 20 points a game, 36% from three. But his BPM like is hovering like near zero, which indicates to you that he's kind of eating dessert all the time. Wouldn't you
BPM,
say?
Can you explain that for listeners who are like, what is BPM? So am I fat? TMI?
No, it's one of those ad nauseum. I reference this all the time. Some people value it more than others, but it's sort of it measures on ball efficiency more. It like favors on ball people, but it's Basketball Reference. It's one of their like catch all efficiencies, pretty heavily, for people who control the ball. But it kind of indicates that he's not doing a whole lot of sharing. Like we said, 8.7% assist percentage, and then 30.8 usage. So it's just a whole lot of shooting. I think I've said to you, it kind of reminds me of Jaquan Lyle whenever he transferred and he was like 24 years old. If you ever watched his games, I think he was New Mexico State. I forget which one it was, but he was just wild. Emoni, I asked you physically, I mean, he's very skinny. He obviously has that like dribble shake. He can get to his jumper, probably to the point where it is counterproductive for him. I would say counterproductive for their team at times. He can get hot. He misses cutters a whole lot. Like there's a lot of different times. I screen grabbed one and sent it to you of him just like, and you can, he makes his mind up really early, I feel like. You can see a play developing and you can just be like,
his mind is made up when he wakes up in the morning, Kyle.
It's so true. It's so true. You can just see it. I just start laughing sometimes because I'm like, he's shooting this ball. Like there's just no doubt about it. Yeah.
I kind of wish, I mean, like I mentioned in, the block shot he had in last night's game, and he got all intense. He talked trash. I wish he brought that mindset to everything besides just blocking an occasional shot and shooting the ball every time he can. Because if he fully embraced that dog in him, right, and said, I'm going to be the best playmaker I can be. This is what I'm going to wake up today and do at the best possible level, at the most intense level. I'm going to be an on-ball stopper at this level. Those are the things that he has to do, because even right now for Eastern Michigan, my big question still is, yes, this guy is a dynamic scorer from the outside, at least at this level, against this level of competition. But what can Emoni do when it's not about Emoni? He's 27 assists to 52 turnovers. Like you said, Kyle, considering the amount of attention he draws on the offensive end, he misses playmaking opportunities. His efficiency would be better if he did target those, cutters and, spot up shooters rather than force a lot of shots. So what can Emoni do when it's not about Emoni? Has he shown anything this year to show like, hey, if I'm a second round pick, I'm going to grind on defense. I'm going to make the next the good to great pass. I don't know. I haven't personally seen it.
The good to great pass. That's a good question. I don't even know how many secondary assists he has like in his adult life. Like I don't even know like, and what he's done kind of periodically and gradually here is he's built up some walls that I feel like he's increasingly kind of just building walls that are narrowing his upside, because we went from thinking this guy obviously had elite scoring talent when you saw him when he was younger, and it was like, well, the sky's the limit. But then as he continued to play, the play style didn't really evolve, and we were like, okay, well, he's not really going to be like a guy who gets high volume offense and then kind of goes from there and grows as a playmaker. It's just kind of been right down the middle, like he's been the same guy. And then when you jump to the top level, I guess it becomes a question of where do you go? And I really think he's going to be, I said this about Shaden. I think it from player to player, this matters in every draft. It matters more for some than it does for others. Where he goes is going to matter a lot. I hope that he goes somewhere that really motivates him to do what you just said, that like motivates him to be competitive. And with offensive players, I think sometimes we can look at what they do on the offensive end and sort of infer what could be done if they flipped. Like, I don't know, we said that about Luka early on. We're like, man, he sees angles so super well. You'd think he'd be like angularly intelligent on the defensive end or things like that. I think it's going to matter. I think that's going to matter. I asked you, do you think, I mean, can he be like a big Bones Highland type? I mean, he just turned 19 years old. That's another thing to remember. Like literally on January 28th, he turned 19 years old. Do you think he could be that? Like if he gets hitched to like a guy who is like a great playmaker and just lets him be himself, could he be that kind of bucket getter, like designated bucket getter?
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, him turning just 19 years old is the thing to remember here. Like he's still just a teenager and, watch his Instagram lives. Like he's still immature. Like he has a lot of growing up to do. And I think for an NBA team, this is genuinely a long-term investment. So it's possible that he turns into Bones Highland on his second team. it's possible that if he lands in the right situation with his first team, like we're like, oh, he's 21 years old. And all of a sudden, like, why was this guy I drafted in the 30s or the 40s? Why did he go undrafted? Why was he drafted in the late teens? I mean, because all it takes is one team. Remember when Thon Maker got drafted in the lottery? And there was a level of surprise. Like a lot of NBA teams were shocked it happened, that he actually went lotto to the Bucks. But all it takes is one. Just one team to say Emoni Bates is 6'10" and he can shoot anything he wants from the perimeter. We have a good culture. We're going to turn him into the best version of himself. That's all it takes. Just one team. That's all.
Yeah, and good teams with good culture. I really feel like there's been a premium on that lately. In this like wooing superstars era, these teams that have developed great culture have found edges on that front. I feel like, and speaking about like passing and things like that. This season, with all the touches that he's gotten, all the minutes that he's played, he's only hit the over 2 assist mark 3 times in 20 games. So it can kind of give you an idea there. I know I said the thing about the percentage, but that fleshes it out even more. This question kind of, I talked about the process we went through of like big time score. Our imagination goes wild as the thing kind of unfolds. It narrows and our expectations kind of change and things like that. Then you kind of have to go from, are you okay with that? Is it okay that he's going to just be that? Yes, if it means you're going to get paid differently. I know like the other day Bill was talking about D'Angelo Russell was being paid like he was a superstar, but really he's really this designated type player, which is fine if they do that efficiently. But how we've gotten to this point, I think, is something that's really interesting for me because he leaves Memphis. I think people generally wanted him to stick it out. I think we all kind of wanted to see him operating in a team because it seemed like it was enabling some of the things that were the most questionable about him, which is shot selection, narrow focus when he's on the floor. He goes to Eastern Michigan, and I've given him grief for it. What do you think? And I think this is like a broader rhetoric kind of question for the draft. What do you think it is? Is it fair to chastise Emoni for making that choice to go to a construct where he can play through the waste, through the bad decisions? Is it fair for us to do that and then out of the other side of our mouth praise somebody like Victor Wembanyama for leaving Oswell Villeurbanne to go to Mets 92, where he's kind of doing the same thing? Granted, his impact is broader, but like the shooting and the scoring wastefulness I'm not going to say it's directly comparable, but do you think that's fair? Do you think that it's fair for us to criticize guys for making that choice?
I think it's completely fair because the things Emoni Bates needs to work on are things that would work in a better construct where there's more talent around him, where he doesn't have to shoot 20 times per game, where sometimes he has to have games where he might not even be on ball nearly as much. Like he needs to work as a playmaker, making those little decisions, the cuts to the basket, the kickouts, the finding a cutter. He needs to work on being the best defender he can be. That team sucks. They're terrible. And for him at that school, the level of competition he's going against, the quality of teammates he has that can help lift him and he could be in position to lift them, it's just not there. Whereas with Wembanyama, going to Mets 92, they wanted, just in terms of structure, like a once-a-week schedule. It was partially that, like playing once a week, playing for a historic coach, getting the freedom to work on the things that he does need to work on. We already know Wembanyama, we've known for a long time that he is a high-effort, intense defensive player. He is somebody who is smart and works hard. And now he's in a position where he can, rather than play 10 minutes per game, and maybe not get many shots when surrounded by veterans, now he's able to work on some of the tools that could turn him into a bona fide superstar. Obviously, like even beyond obvious number one pick with the types of scores, the types of ways he can create baskets for himself with the crossovers and the freedom. He plays like an NBA player overseas, which is something that I think is beneficial for him. So I think you're right. In a lot of cases, it would be almost hypocritical to praise Wembanyama and then criticize Bates for making the decisions they respectively made. But I think on an individual basis, Wembanyama made the choice that was best for him. Bates probably made the choice that he had to make, considering what happened last year away from the court.
Huge factor that has to be pointed out.
For sure. But also just purely from a basketball standpoint, I don't think he has shown anything that we haven't known about him already. Like we talked about those first couple weeks of the season. I love watching Emoni Bates. I think he is so fun. I love watching his highlights. I love when they pop up on my timeline on Twitter or Instagram. I always watch because Bates is fun. When I watched him in high school, I was like, oh my God, this dude could be like Kevin Durant with Kevin Garnett's trash talk.
It's almost like reality TV,
it.
though, right? You're watching it, but you're just like, I can't believe this is happening more than like I'm witnessing art. You know, it's like it's a different experience. Yeah,
sure, totally different, and that's where like my source of disappointment is, or lack of fulfillment in Bates, where I don't think that type of progress will happen until he's in the NBA, and I hope he lands in a good situation with like good veterans, a good coach, an invested, stable front office. Like all of those factors help him grow from a teenager into a man and become somebody who can score the way he can and, you know, be a spark plug for a team, can light it up at any moment, but also have the other qualities that provide him consistent minutes and opportunity on the court, whether that's at the G League to start or in the NBA to start on like a younger team. I don't think the latter is going to happen, but for Bates, it's going to be a tough path to the NBA, more than expected when people thought he'd be a top 5 pick. So he's going to have the mental fortitude for this journey as well. Like this is ultimately just the beginning for him.
Yeah, and I think that the big difference between, you know, looping it back to comparing like a Wemby, and this is more of a commentary on guys that like get set up to take on the superstar path. Searat and I were talking yesterday about LeBron. The remarkable thing about LeBron throughout is that as talented as he was, and you see this a lot with guys that kind of go the distance, that have those expectations, is there's like a humility, like there's confidence balanced with a self-awareness and humility of like the work, putting in the work, being diligent, being self-aware. And honestly, I think this goes beyond basketball. I think like sometimes self-awareness and humility they kind of need external forces can have to kind of push those into your life. You know, I know I've experienced some of that myself. And I mean, for Emoni, it might be a different experience. Like you said, it might take a good environment. It might take a good culture to kind of say, hey man, like you should play this way, and get into into a construct where the expectations push him to grow in that way. But Sharks and I used to talk about like, what would you rather do? Would you rather play for, it was through a different lens, but like, would you rather play for a really good team less that wins a lot? Or would you rather be the more of the focal point on a team that doesn't win as much, but you have play a bigger role? I think when guys choose a construct at lower levels where they're the focus, I guess it just really kind of comes down to the self-awareness and the intent. Like we've mapped all this out. I think that Wemby has it right now. Emoni doesn't appear to be operating on the same level, you know.
What would you rather do, Kyle, with that Sharks question about winning more, playing less, you know, or winning less, playing more?
I went on record about this. Kirk, our buddy Kirk Henderson, was texting me like
we
would laugh
Kirk.
about. Yeah, we would laugh about.
Kirk's awesome.
I think for me, it's a little tough. Like, I mean, like if you're looking at it through the lens of now I'm older and I played on like only bad teams when I was growing up, and I would much rather play a lesser role in a team that wins. I'd pick it 100 times rather than like putting up a bunch of points and being on a bad team, for me personally.
I think there's nothing sweeter than the joy of winning on a team. Like the togetherness you have, you know, the investment you put in together. Like that to me is the most enjoyable path. Like if I could become an NBA player tomorrow, and I was told I'll suddenly be 6'8", in amazing shape.
6'8".
Oh my God! We're writing like a movie script here.
Yeah,
5'10" geek becomes an NBA player overnight.
You get the leg surgery that they're doing for people. Have you seen that?
I've seen that. Isn't that nuts? Can you imagine ever getting that?
You think like Spotify would pay for you to do that? That'd be good content. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Would you do that if they were like, we'd pay for it? Would you get taller?
Hell no, dude. No way. Look, this isn't a boob job.
I just had to know.
I mean, that's what people compare it to. Like they say it's like a boob job for men. No, it's not. Like they are like you are not walking for 10 months.
I don't know why that tickled me so much, but just imagining you doing it for a video or something. Sorry. Oh my God. Anyway, yeah, it's
for anybody who doesn't know. There's this surgery, like newish surgery it's like leg lengthening.
Yeah,
limb lengthening. And like you have these guys who are like 5'6" that grow to 5'10" or 5'11" or 5'10" to 6'2" and all that. And what do? They like break your hip or something like that? Or
they
like
break your femur. No, it's always these rich guys that are like, I got to outkick my cover. I don't know. I feel like everybody they've profiled, I was like, this dude's rich and lonely. I don't know. But that's mean. I shouldn't say that. If we have a listener that got the surgery done, I'd be curious to know. Somebody hit me up.
Well, it'd be a low percentage. Like I don't like. I think
low percentage of humans who have done it. Period.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So I mean, the likelihood of a I hope so, man. If you are a listener of this show and you got the surgery done,
if lightning strikes and you are listening to this,
tweet at us. Because I would be legitimately curious about somebody getting the surgery. What
Sure.
NBA player would benefit from the surgery?
Oh God. Oh man. That's a good question.
Who is that short guard that came in the draft like in 2015?
Tyler Ulis?
Tyler Ulis, thank you. Yes. Tyler Ulis.
He was a baller, dude. He was just too small.
If Tyler Ulis were 6'2", 6'3", he'd be making a lot of money right now in the NBA, I think.
He was good, dude. Like he was probably the best. He's the best point guard of the Cal era, in my opinion. Yeah. Like he was incredible. Anyway, yeah,
I love Tyler Ulis. Let's talk about somebody who definitely does not need this surgery.
Perfect. Perfect.
You want to introduce him, Kyle?
Let's talk about the behemoth playing up at Purdue. I'm assuming that's who you're referring to.
Yes,
Zach Edey. Zach Edey is 7'4". No, he does not need the surgery to extend his.
He needs a reduction.
Maybe. I don't know. I like him the way he is. Positive body image on this show. No, he is. You are valuable. Anyway, yeah. So Purdue's had like a slew of 7-footers like this over the years. Matt Harms, Isaac Haas. They've had a couple of I think they just, one of their Matt Painter's recruiting strategies is just go find these gargantuan humans and they'll kind of turn them into good college basketball players. He's been one of the most efficient college basketball players in the past couple of years. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt or just kind of asking the question, like, if this guy is so dominant in college, could he play in the NBA? Why or why not? So I guess let's just kick it off with that. I mean, from that basic premise. I mean, Kevin, where are you on Zach Edey? Do you think that he has any chance of A, getting drafted, and B, being on a roster or contributing in any meaningful way?
I think he should be a second-round draft pick. I pretty confidently say that. I think with Edey, he is 7'4", but he's not like some oaf. Like, he's got skill out there on the offensive end. His scoring on the inside, the touch he has, the intensity, he plays hard. He embraces his role. Like, I think he's somebody who understands his game and understands what his NBA role is going to be like. I watched an interview when I did his draft profile for the NBA draft guide. It's not in the guide right now because I don't have him as a first-round pick. But when he was talking about playing for the Canadian national team, and he's like the things that Nick Nurse is having me do, and the things that I'm going to have to do in the NBA, it's less posting up. I'm screening and rolling hard to the basket, catching passes high and low. He was describing his role to a T. And I think it's not like he's going to go to the NBA and have any fantasy about being a guy who's going to get the type of usage he has right now at Purdue. He's a good passer. He handles double teams at Purdue. In the NBA, he's going to be somebody who can make the passes within the flow. The questions with him are obvious. I mean, he doesn't shoot away from the basket. He's not a good defender. Even at the college level, like, he is a good defender, but when you project him forward to the NBA, the lack of, fluidity, the movement, the agility outside, that's going to be what's going to make or break him. However, Kyle, I think there's enough great bigs in the NBA today that he can be someone who maybe he doesn't play every night. At worst, someone who doesn't play every night and comes out in certain games where you need a guy who's 7'4", who can score around the basket, make the right play, and trust him, and provide some size on the interior on defense. Boban Marjanovic is in the 8th year of his career. That's like somebody who is not a nightly player, but he's still in the NBA. You have guys like Zubats who are drafted late first round, early second round, and he turns himself into a nightly rotation player for a really good team. It can happen. So I think with Edey, he has enough skill and the right mindset and approach and the intensity out there that I feel really good about him as like being worthy of a second round draft pick. Personally, I have no questions about it.
I think somebody will take a chance. I'm a little skeptical based on I'm not as high on how quickly he sees the doubles when they come. I think I was thinking about this the other night that it's okay to be a simple, like it's okay to be a very simple tool with a really specific purpose. Like you don't necessarily need to be an all-encompassing, like, you know, those players are the most valuable. At the other end of the spectrum, I don't know, like the other night, I was thinking about this. Meg and I were making black bean burgers. And before she came home, she was like, can you smash these black beans for me before I get home? I was like, smash them? What am I going to fucking smash them with? I was like, I was like a spoon was like, I was just working way too hard. I was like, if only I had something that I could just kind of pulverize them with, it'd be a thing that I would rarely use. But I mean, because you're not going to lay them out on a cutting board. I'm not going to act like I know my way around the kitchen. You're smiling really big right now. I was just thinking about like Zach Edey's kind of like that. There might be nights where you need to make black bean burgers and you need to smash some beans. You don't need to smash the food every single night. It's not like a hammer. It's different. I need to squish them. I don't need to pulverize them. But if you look at his use as a college player, it's been very narrow, but like extremely effective. Just because he's huge and people can't guard him. Kind of reminds me of Karnowski a little bit at Gonzaga a few years ago. You talked about the defense. I think positionally he's okay. He gets to the right spots. He's not disruptive. I told you since 2008, there have been 54 players over 7'2", and Edey's last two seasons are 43 and 44 in block percentage. So he's not blocking a lot of shots. He's more of a like, some of that could be like, hey, don't challenge him, don't go at him. And then on the other end, I do think that he could get exploited in games that get into the blender and teams that can move the ball and things like that. But on the other end, man, he's just...
Which, by the way, is going to be the big test for Purdue this entire season. I mean, like they're 21-1 right now. Still a lot of doubters with what's going to happen with them come March.
Yeah, I'd love to see him play like a team like Houston or Alabama, some of these teams that have a lot of attackers that could spread them out. I mean, this is what they ran into last year with even like St. Peter's. And that's going to be the question for him. But like offensively, he is heavily post-oriented. He like leads the country in post percentage frequency, which is something that Synergy measures. And within that, he's very heavily trying to get over his left shoulder to that righty baby hook. Now it works, you know, like I talked about using something that is a simple tool. It's simple. It really works. But yeah, you're right. I don't think he has any kind of fantasy about like shooting jump shots because I could not find a clip of him shooting a jump shot in college. Have you tried? No. Have you looked into this?
No, I mean, when I did my profile, I've watched every basket I could from him away from the basket, like you know, outside of the restricted area to see like what's his touch look like. You know, are there any examples of him actually shooting jumpers? And no, it's not something that he does. He does have good touch around the basket.
Oh yeah,
you know,
he does.
He's a solid free throw shooter. So is it necessary for him to ever develop as like a 33% spot up shooter from deep? I mean,
it'd be fun, but I don't see it happening.
It'd be really nice. Ultimately, though, what he's going to have to do is what we described earlier. It's all that stuff on the interior, the catch and finish. He had a play against Michigan State the other night. He had, 38 points in that game? 38 against Michigan State. And, you know, it was kind of an NBA-like action where he set a screen, rolled to the basket, you know, one smaller helper inside on the paint, catches the ball high, holds it high, lands, you know, it's like great body control and laid the ball up, like from the left side of the basket over to the right side. It was like great coordination. Those are the type of baskets you'll see him have to finish a lot in the NBA. And that's not his primary offense at Purdue. Like you said, he's a high frequency post player, the highest post frequency player. But I think he's quite good at those type of NBA style actions. And that's where the improvement was this year after playing for the Canadian national team, working on that all summer compared to past seasons.
Yeah, I was joking with a friend of mine about like I watched a lot of Edey tape kind of just to get ready to talk about this, and what I kind of came away with. I'm not saying he's without nuance, but I do think that like I could have probably watched him for 2 or 3 minutes, and like my takeaways wouldn't have been drastically different just because it is such a simple proposition. Like I said, like and that's okay. He's not super twitchy, but he's coordinated. You know, I think what we said at the top. I think somebody will probably give him a chance, and I think he's probably a roster big if he's on a roster at all. If you think you talked about Boban, an occasional thing that you
do you see upside for him to be a nightly player in an 8-man rotation, 9-man rotation over the course of the regular season? Do you see that upside?
The mobility makes me wonder, man, because I don't know. You look at like a guy like Luka Garza, not nearly as big, but he offers a wider skill set, and that kind of makes up for the fact that he doesn't move super well. He's not going to be able to compensate in those ways. So I'm pretty skeptical of that happening. What do you think?
I mean, I think considering the fact he's ranked as a second-round draft pick, you lean no. But just inherently, that's the case if you rank a guy in the second round. But I think he has that upside. I think he has enough skill. But like obviously, he needs to dramatically improve his mobility on defense. And this is also going to have to be the type of thing where it's the right team construct too. Let's move on and talk about Gradey Dick and talk specifically about his defense, because we know Gradey Dick, what he can do on offense. He's only gotten better for Kansas this year. He's not just a shooter. He's shown even more of the stuff we talked about earlier in the season. It's a playmaker, kind of a connective piece on offense, guy who can, not just shoot spot up threes off screens, but pump, side dribble, create shots for himself. Early in the year, though, Kyle, he got absolutely roasted on defense, attacked over and over in the second half of a game, had to be benched at one point, and the concern was, can Gradey Dick survive on the defensive end at the next level, or never mind, even in the college level in big games, never mind in the NBA. But I think over the course of this season, PD Webb, our friend who does great draft content, he tweeted out kind of I think it was one clip of Gradey Dick, or maybe it was a compilation video. I forget off the top of my head where it was like
it was one
of deflections, loose balls, strips, like those defensive playmaker moments that Dick has. And that's what I've seen over the course of this season, where he may need to improve his lateral quickness on ball, but he has the intelligence on defense, the awareness, and off ball, he's quite good. How have you seen Gradey Dick progress on defense this year for Kansas, and how do you project him moving forward when we look ahead to the NBA?
Glad we got a PD Webb shout out in there. Very long overdue. I love PD Webb.
PD's great.
Love seeing him and catching up when I rarely get to. Over the course of the season, I think you look at it and it's kind of the natural things here that seem maybe imply just physically for him. He's really, really tall, as we said, for a wing, about 6'8". I think his center of gravity is a little high. Like he seems like he doesn't have like the lower body, like he can't really get super wide, and he's a little upright at times. Also, he has narrow shoulders, so I think he's always going to kind of run into this, I think, throughout his career just because of his build, like the narrow shoulders and things. I think bigger physical wings are going to be able to like kind of power through his chest pretty easily. If you imagine, name any powerful scoring wing, I feel like that's going to be an issue for him. In that clip, he stripped Chris Livingston, who is kind of notoriously sloppy with the ball, but he does well in those little opportunistic things, and he competes. So I think the question is just going to be, does he compete enough to stay out there? I always think he's probably going to get attacked a little bit in the same way. I don't know if I have a direct comparison in my mind. He definitely has improved in his consistency in that sense, I think. But I think he's always going to have to kind of reckon with this throughout his career.
Which is fine. Like if he were a lockdown defender, he'd be a top 5 pick.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you're getting Gradey Dick in the late lottery or even just outside the lottery, you're getting somebody who you're drafting him for knockdown shooting, athleticism at the rim, connective playmaking, hustle. I mean, like he checks all the boxes of what you want as like a player who contributes at a high level to winning basketball. It's just going to be a matter of what level does he reach on defense. Is he going to be like a total liability like he was in that early season game? I don't think so. I don't think he's a bad defender. I think he's going to be at worst average. And maybe somebody, if he improves his athleticism with NBA strength and conditioning as he becomes, 22, 23 years old, he can become a reliable defender because of his length and athleticism and all that. So I think with Gradey Dick, I have him 15th on my big board, that was dropped a couple weeks ago.
That's
He'll probably
fair.
end up much higher than that.
Okay.
I could see him 9, 10, 11, something in that range. Right now I have him behind Maxwell Lewis, who I drop behind Gradey Dick right now. Have him behind Gigi Jackson. Gigi's had a lot of up and downs this year. I can see Gradey Dick ahead of him as well. Shooting matters a lot in the NBA, dude. It's hard to find knockdown shooters.
Where did you hear that? I haven't heard. I know.
I had no idea.
Did you just think of that just now?
Who's Steph Curry?
That was revelatory. But it does. It has to be impressed all over and over again. I was thinking about, I know NBA fans, and I look at this too all the time, like the 538's Raptor grid that they put up there. Sometimes it's fun to just kind of see where guys are in the quadrant. Where do you think he could land in the quadrant? Do you think that he'll be for people that don't know, plus offensive, plus defensive is in the upper right. So I kind of feel like he'll probably be like a positive offensive player who kind of like just holds up, like is close to zero, basically. Like he needs to hold up defensively, I think. I don't know that he's ever going to be like on the plus side in that upper right quadrant, would be kind of my opinion on that. Sure, but that's where the best players are.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with the quadrant. I know their lists. They have like a quadrant,
Oh yeah, that's my favorite part. I honestly don't really even look at the list of them.
I know the list. I don't think I've ever seen the quadrant on there, but I'll have to check that out afterwards.
I just plugged them, so check it out. Yeah,
I think that concept also applies to the next player we're going to talk about, Cam Whitmore, out of Villanova. Kind of a top 5-ish projected prospect entering the college year. Missed the start of the season with an injury, but he's been up and down ever since then. What's been interesting to monitor with him is his shooting, because at the high school level, according to Cerebro Sports, he shot 30.6% from three on a sample of 121 shots tracked by them. At FIBA last year, he shot 45.5% on 10 of 22 threes, a low sample size, like pretty insignificant. However, this year in college, his first 8 games, shot 26.7% on 30 attempts from behind the arc. Last 6 games, 45.5% on 15 of 33 behind the arc. He's made at least one three in all 6 of those games. Looks smooth, looks fluid, and shooting an identical percentage to what he did at FIBA last year. With Cam Whitmore, the things we know, great athlete, explosive at-rim finisher, hard-nosed, tough defender. Those are the things we know. What we don't know is what level he'll be as a shooter. Have you seen progress from him as a shooter that kind of matched the improving percentages, Kyle, over the course of the season for Cam Whitmore?
I think it's been about discernment for him, because if you go back and look at some of I don't know that he's going to have a major mechanics shift during college that is going to make me, if there's been a minute one that Villanova fans have noticed and could point out, I don't think that I haven't seen anything dramatic, because he's kind of shooting similarly to what I've seen him do in the past. To me, it's been more of a discernment kind of a question, because if you go back and look at some of his games where he had some dips, I think he had a game against here recently where he had like a 20% and then you mentioned the last 6 games. Really the only 2 rough outings he had, and that was 20% at St. John's and then 33.3% at DePaul.
33.3% is not rough.
It's just not stellar. It's okay. Yeah. And then I think whenever he gets into those, and some of those were like late shot clock, the more discerning he is about his self-created ones, I think his percentage will be better. I don't expect him to be taking a lot of wild self-created ones unless some things happen. I just think his mechanics are just interesting to me. And this is something I just wanted to throw to you. If you consider, I love watching guys shoot and just kind of figuring out their energy flow and just studying that. He really, really has hard wrist flexion. And I had to make sure I got that term right. But just like when you flex your wrist after your shot, have you noticed just he has an interesting kind of you remember, I think you and I have talked about this in the past, Mike Bowie, that data scientist guy, did that really cool project about the energy transfer of the best shooters in the league.
Unpredictable.
Yes, Unpredictable. Yeah, that's his site. I think I do that every time I say his name and not the site. Check it out. It's awesome. But if you watch the best shooters, there's a nice sort of a soft curve at the end of their energy transfer where and that kind of factors into your arc angle, which affects how your ball, whether your ball falls into the basket or it's sailing kind of horizontally, which causes it your ball's more likely to go in. The better the arc angle is, the more it's falling. If you compare the way his wrist flexes with somebody like Keontae George, like we've talked about how soft the end of his release is, I kind of wonder if that's where some of that is. Now, he has promising things in his shot. He doesn't have a huge load up. Like, you don't see him bending his knees or having a huge dip to try to get it up there. I kind of feel like he could develop a softer three-point shot, just because if he does that, if he's more discerning and he works on that part of it, I feel like he could develop into a semi-reliable shooter.
Well, is that what's happening right now?
Could be. I don't know. At that point, you're confident in all the other stuff he does. He attacks the basket like a damn demon. I mean, he finishes through contact. We've talked about he's got long arms. He's super strong. I just think that part of his jump shot has been interesting to me, and I think it's tweakable if the right team gets a hold of him.
I'm with you there, Kyle. I think with Cam Whitmore, positive progress, still super tiny, small samples, but it's nice to see him shoot the hell out of it at FIBA last summer. Slow start this year, coming back from injury, now shooting the hell out of it. And like you said, the shot selection's been good, showing good discernment with the decisions he's making out there. I feel an increased level of confidence, but we'll see. It's only February 1st right now. He's still got a little bit to go this college season. Let's go to our weekly Wemby. Only had one game this past week, Kyle. He had 12 for 28 for 31 points, 34 minutes, 5 blocks, 2 assists, 14 rebounds. What were your big takeaways from Wembanyama this past week?
Yeah, well, they got blown out by that same team that killed him last time. Yeah, it's that Stephon Moody team. It's weird. Tremont Waters didn't obviously play this time. I mean, he just had some moments that were bonkers. I mean, and both of them were kind of. I think the two that we pointed out were the most dramatic and the most eye-popping are when he improvised when he was being pressured. I think on 2 different occasions, somebody tried to gamble for a steal, and there was like a wild sequence where he had to wrangle the ball, whether it was on a bad pass or it got deflected. And both times he kind of like gathered himself, which is you don't see a lot of guys do. You're talking about somebody who's the same size. Can you imagine Zach Edey doing that? Which kind of speaks to just how phenomenally talented and rare somebody like Wemby is. But on one of the plays, he wrangled the bad pass, went between his legs, and then went up and shot a 3 in traffic. And then on another one, he split a double team. There was a helper came to like dig on a drive, and he split the double team and then just tomahawked over like 2 or 3 defenders. That broke my brain.
It's amazing how small the court looks when he leaps in the air, like that tomahawk dunk you're talking about, where the help defender kind of dug into him and he still avoided him, and then he skies towards the rim, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much that's going to happen in the league.
Maybe
it will.
Spacing behind the arc and teams are forced to close out hard on him.
His handle is really like just phenomenal. I mean, we've seen 7-footers shoot the ball. I really am kind of coming around to thinking that the handle is the thing. Like he does get into these. I brought this up like that. It reminds me of like early basketball video games. I know that they had these things called anims, which were basically like programmed sequences where like games today are way more intuitive. Like you can improvise every little thing in NBA 2K. But back in the day, like if a player started a motion, they would finish it. And you can kind of see him doing that. It's not terribly dissimilar from earlier when we were talking about like Emoni where he gets tunnel vision. But I don't think it's the exact same thing. Like Wemby will get into these sequences where he's trying to make a move and it's almost like he just goes into a trance and he stops seeing the floor. Like there are a lot of situations where when he's going into a shot, he just freezes everybody. Like he just freezes everybody and there are passes there that are available to be made that I could see some playmaking upside on that front.
Sure. I agree with you there. And that's what, we were talking earlier about Bates and Wemby, and I mentioned the mindset with Wemby. I think he's shown enough playmaking flashes where I'm like, okay, is he if he when he becomes a guy who's drawing constant attention with the ball is in his hands, I think he's going to be the type of player who will develop that ability to spot those cutters and make his teammates better on a nightly basis. Like he's had too many good moments as a playmaker for me to feel otherwise, and his mindset is always winning. It's always about what's best for the team. I know that's like such cliche stuff to say, but it doesn't make it any less true. It is true in the case of Victor Wembanyama, his approach to the game and to his own body, the investment he makes. This guy like wants to win and be the best player he can. And at some point in his career, if he's drawing double teams when he's on the post, if he's, attacking closeouts and defenses are over rotating and helping inside, he'll be the type of guy who's making that kick out accurately.
I think so. And he can, his passing touch is pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting, man, is like if you watch him, we talked about how like just awestruck you are when he makes a play at the rim or when he makes a play at the outside. And I've talked about how he's able to like contort through contact and finish with touch. It really, and how I was skeptical about like the question really is the stuff in between. Is he going to be able to like cross that threshold in between the 3-point line and the rim? That really didn't. It's like going over the middle in football, like guys who are willing and able to go make a play over the middle where they're vulnerable. That's where he's gonna be most vulnerable, I think. Like
what do you mean? As a ball handler, as a shooter?
Yes, as a handler in the middle. He's so tall that I just think that like people are going to like crowd him like those. Like at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back where they like tangle the AT-AT up and he falls. Like I just think in traffic, he's so skinny that I just think that's the question. Like, is he going to be able to operate in the middle of the floor? Like Giannis is able to do that because he can get so low to the ground and keep his balance and stuff like that. I don't know that Wemby is going to be able to do that. I think, I don't know. I guess my question is just like him driving the ball, I guess is what it comes down to. Do you think how much of a driver is he going to be and does he need to be in the NBA?
I mean, I think with him, that play you mentioned at the end of the game the other night showed pretty good upside there, man. Attacking that closeout, reacting to a help defender coming out of nowhere, still getting to the basket and finishing over everybody. He's shooting 50%, on mid-range jumpers. Some of those are from the post. Some of them are face-ups. Some of them are just turn around. But I think he's got the ability long term. It's not like he's stiff in the upper or lower body. No. He's pretty fluid.
No, I don't think he's stiff at all. I think, and it's
It's
definitely not about handle or anything like that. It's more
just the pure size. Like he's just so big. You mean?
Yeah, I mean he's going to be vulnerable even when he's trying to get low. And I just kind of wonder about. There's a functionality filter that happens when guys go to the NBA where it's like amazing. You see a guy at lower levels drive through there. The defenses get more sophisticated. It might just be kind of a thing where it's like driving isn't something that is his calling card, but it's something he can do because we've seen it. Like you're right, we've seen him do that, and he does the other things well enough that I think that it won't have to be his thing.
Well, Kyle, I enjoyed this pod. Hope you have a great rest of your week. What do you have got going on? Thursday through next Tuesday. Anything good going on?
Oh, just going to watch a lot of NBA in college, man, and prep for stuff. How about you?
That's pretty much it.
That's always it, right?
At all times.
I love people that are like, they're always people who insinuate that there's some into it. I'm like, nah, man, this is just, you just imagine this is a pile of gravel that you shovel, and every time you shovel, some gravel appears in its place. That's what it is. But if you love basketball, which we do, that's a good thing.
Well,
right?
I'll tell you what, this week will be a little different though, because it's also the NBA trade deadline coming up in 8 days. So there'll be a lot of attention on the phone, and texting and figuring out, what could be happening. Rather than on some games over the next week. But I look forward to that. I'm sure you'll be talking about that on Tuesday on the Answer with Sirius Sohi on the Ringer NBA show feed. And we'll be back again next Wednesday here on the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Have a good one, Kyle.
You too, bud.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing. Hope you have the rest of your week.